America isn't in decline, it's falling apart. 60% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. 1 in 4 teens has considered suicide. Fathers are disappearing from the home. The dollar is losing global power. And trust in every U.S. institution, Congress, media, schools, elections is at record lows. You're not imagining it. Something is breaking. The empire isn't just crumbling, it's rotting from the inside out. And today, I'm counting down the 10 real reasons why this country is falling apart faster than anyone in power will admit. Let's start with number 10. The country is being hollowed out by fake prosperity, built on a dying middle class. America's middle class isn't shrinking, it's being obliterated. For decades, we've measured our success through the stock market, corporate profits, and GDP growth, but none of that reflects what's happening on the ground. The real economy, the one you live in, not the one on CNBC, is gutted. According to Pew Research, the middle class has gone from making up 61% of Americans in 1971 to just 50% today. Worse, that statistic hides the erosion of quality within that group. Middle-class wages haven't kept up with inflation, and a staggering 60% of Americans now live paycheck to paycheck. That's not a functioning middle class, that's economic quicksand. While Wall Street is bathing in artificial liquidity, Main Street is buried under $17 trillion in household debt. Do you know what the average American credit card interest rate is right now? Over 22%. That's usury, plain and simple. And it's a symptom of a deeper disease. We've substituted real wealth with debt-fueled consumption. People are financing groceries. Let that sink in. And yet policymakers keep parroting the same nonsense about low unemployment, as if having 3 part-time jobs with no benefits is proof of a strong economy. What's really happening is this. The American dream has been rebranded as a financial illusion, and we've exported all the real value-producing jobs overseas. Manufacturing, once the backbone of the American middle class, now accounts for just 8.3% of U.S. employment, down from 30% in the 1950s. And it's not just the jobs, it's the pride, the community, the generational stability that those jobs supported. We don't make things anymore. We import, we speculate, we financialize. Meanwhile, private equity and hedge funds are buying up entire neighborhoods, turning people into permanent renters. Home ownership? It used to be a ladder into the middle class. Now, it's a gate you can't afford to climb unless you're born on the other side. This isn't just economic decay, it's the disintegration of a national identity. And no empire can last when the people who built it can no longer afford to live in it. 9. A corporate cartel runs the country, and it's strangling small business to death. You're told we live in a free market. But take one look around at your grocery store, your pharmacy, your internet provider, your bank, and ask yourself, how many real choices do you actually have? America doesn't run on capitalism anymore. It runs on monopolies dressed up as consumer choice. In 2023, 4 companies controlled 85% of the U.S. beef market. 2 companies controlled over 90% of the soda you drink. 3 health insurers dominate half the market. And when it comes to big tech, Google, Apple, Amazon, and Facebook have a stranglehold over your data, your dollars, and your daily life. This isn't competition, it's cartel behavior with a smiley face logo. And while these behemoths enjoy record-breaking profits, the small businesses, the engine of American innovation, are being slaughtered. COVID, lockdowns? They were a death sentence for mom-and-pop shops. Over 200,000 small businesses permanently closed between 2020 and 2022, while Amazon doubled its profits. Coincidence? Try coordination. The system is now designed to crush small-scale competition. Banks won't lend to local startups. Regulations ironically written by the big boys themselves are so complex that only giant firms can afford the legal teams to comply. And when a small company shows promise, it's bought out, gutted, or buried. This isn't a free market. It's a corporate monarchy, and you're not the customer, you're the product. Don't believe it? Look at healthcare. Pharma giants jack up insulin prices 1,000%, while politicians pretend to negotiate behind closed doors. Grocery chains post billion-dollar quarterly profits, while 44 million Americans face food insecurity. This is not a system designed for you, it's designed around extracting from you. You pay more, you get less. And the kicker? These corporations don't even pay taxes. In 2022, dozens of Fortune 500 companies paid $0 in federal income tax despite raking in billions. The real looting isn't happening in the shadows, it's happening in broad daylight, on quarterly earnings calls, in the boardrooms of conglomerates that own everything from your toothpaste to your pension fund. And as these giants consolidate even more power, democracy shrinks to a whisper. Because let's be honest, when your economic life depends on the whims of 4 CEOs, who really runs the country? 8. The American empire is overextended, and nobody in power wants to admit it. The American empire is in decline, not because we've lost a war, not because we've collapsed financially yet, but because we're trying to control a world that's no longer listening. America has 750 military bases in over 80 countries. That's not defense, that's overreach. We're bleeding $900 billion a year on a military budget that's larger than the next 10 countries combined, while bridges in Pennsylvania are literally collapsing. And the returns on that investment? Almost nothing. Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, trillions spent, thousands of lives lost, and the regions are now more unstable than when we arrived. This isn't strategy, it's hubris. But the real problem isn't just the money, it's the mindset. Washington still believes it can police the world while ignoring its own collapse. Meanwhile, BRICS countries Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa are building a parallel financial system, cutting out the dollar entirely. In 2023, over 80% of oil trades between Russia and China were settled in yuan or rubles. Think about that. The US dollar, the backbone of our global influence, is being phased out. And what are we doing? Sanctions, more debt, and pretending it's 1991 and the Cold War never ended. But the reality is, our unipolar moment is over. The world is moving toward a multipolar order, and we are not adapting, we're clinging. That's why you're seeing economic panic, social decay, and a political system so fractured it can't even pass a budget without a meltdown. We're overstretched abroad and falling apart at home. It's like watching Rome fight wars in Gaul while the Senate burns. And yet the American public is fed the same old myth of exceptionalism, even as our allies hedge their bets and our enemies smell blood. Ask yourself this: if the empire really were thriving, why would our own citizens be living in tents under overpasses while we send $75 billion to Ukraine? Why would veterans be killing themselves at a rate of 22 per day while Lockheed Martin's stock surges? The empire isn't just crumbling, it's devouring its own people to keep the illusion alive. And nobody at the top is willing to say it out loud. 7. The education system is broken and it's producing a nation that can't compete. Let's stop pretending this is just about test scores or bad teachers. The American education system is collapsing at every level, and it's dragging the entire country down with it. In 2023, the nation's report card revealed that U.S. students had the largest decline in reading and math scores in over 30 years, and that's not a temporary COVID glitch. That's a free fall. We are now graduating kids who can't read at grade level, can't do basic algebra, and have never been taught how to think critically. You want to know why democracy is failing? Because we've trained an entire generation to memorize trivia, pass bubble tests, and never question anything. This is by design. Our schools aren't educating, they're conditioning. The average American 8th grader spends more time preparing for standardized tests than learning civics or economics. And it shows. Only 13% of U.S. adults can correctly identify what the First Amendment protects. Only 1 in 3 Americans under 35 can name the 3 branches of government. But they can name 3 Kardashians. This isn't just a cultural issue, it's a structural collapse. Schools are underfunded, over-bureaucratized, and micromanaged by politicians who've never taught a day in their lives. Meanwhile, teachers are quitting in record numbers because they're treated like disposable daycare workers. Over 300,000 public school teachers left the profession in just 2 years. And the replacements? Often underqualified, undertrained, and burned out before they ever set foot in a classroom. The result is a generation of Americans who are digitally literate but intellectually bankrupt, brilliant at swiping screens, hopeless at solving real-world problems. And don't even get started on higher education. Universities have become hedge funds with classrooms attached. Tuition has skyrocketed by over 1,300% since the 1970s, saddling students with $1.7 trillion in debt for degrees that lead to jobs that don't exist. And yet, universities keep building luxury gyms and climbing walls to attract customers. The diploma mill keeps churning, but fewer and fewer graduates are capable of performing in a complex, fast-changing world. We're not preparing kids for the 21st century, we're locking them into the 20th. And while countries like Singapore, Finland, and South Korea invest in rigorous, future-ready education systems, we're teaching kids how to pass outdated tests in buildings with broken HVAC systems and no mental health support. This is not a crisis of learning, it's a crisis of civilization. Because if you want a productive, informed, and resilient nation, it starts in the classroom, and ours are crumbling. 6. A mental health collapse is erupting into a national breakdown. America isn't just dealing with an economic crisis or a political one, we're facing a full-blown mental health catastrophe, and it's metastasizing into every corner of society. You want to understand rising crime, homelessness, suicide, addiction, mass shootings, political extremism, you start with the fact that we're in the middle of a silent psychological collapse. As of 2023, over 57 million American adults, that's nearly 1 in 5, are living with some form of mental illness. For teens, it's worse. Nearly 3 in 5 teenage girls report persistent feelings of sadness or hopelessness. And the youth suicide rate? It's up over 60% since 2007. That's not a trend, that's a national emergency. But instead of addressing it, we've created a society that produces mental illness like a factory. Endless social media doom scrolling, collapsing family structures, no community, no faith, no purpose. We've replaced spiritual meaning with Instagram filters and called it progress. We've isolated people into algorithmically curated echo chambers, then wondered why everyone feels more alone than ever before. Loneliness is now a bigger public health risk than smoking. In fact, the U.S. Surgeon General declared it a national epidemic in 2023, noting that loneliness increases risk of premature death by 29%. But what did we expect? We built cities that nobody can afford, jobs that mean nothing, and a culture that commodifies trauma and monetizes insecurity. And when people break down, what do they get? A 15-minute telehealth consult and a pill. The psychiatric industrial complex hands out SSRIs like candy. But mental health budgets are gutted, and therapy costs more than rent. It's easier to get fentanyl than it is to find a qualified counselor. And let's talk about that. Over 100,000 Americans died from drug overdoses last year. That's a Vietnam War every 12 months. Mostly opioids, mostly preventable, but big pharma profits, and the cycle continues. And through all this, politicians argue about bathrooms and book bans while millions spiral into despair. We are a nation self-medicating with screen time, fast food, and prescription pills and calling it normal. But it's not normal. It's a population-level breakdown that's eroding our workforce, our communities, and our very ability to function as a society. You want to know why America is falling apart? Because millions of its people are quietly falling apart first, and no one's listening. 5. Trust in the system has collapsed, and it's not coming back. There is no glue left, no shared truth, no common ground. America's collapse isn't just material, it's spiritual, psychological, and political. And nothing proves that more than the fact that almost no one believes in the system anymore. According to Gallup, as of 2023, trust in every major institution, Congress, media, big business, the presidency, the courts is near record lows. The only institution Americans still trust more than not? The military. And even that's starting to slip. People don't trust the media because it lies. People don't trust elections because the losing side refuses to accept the outcome. People don't trust science because it's been politicized into oblivion. And people don't trust each other because the social contract is broken. This country used to run on a sense of shared purpose, even when we disagreed. Now 70% of Americans believe the country is on the wrong track, but they can't even agree on what that track is. The right thinks the left is trying to destroy the family. The left thinks the right is trying to install a theocracy. And the center? It's been hollowed out like everything else. But here's the real danger. In any functioning society, trust is the invisible infrastructure. It's the thing that lets you believe the court ruling was fair, the vote was real, the rules apply to everyone. But once trust collapses, the rule of law becomes just a suggestion. Every decision becomes a conspiracy. Every institution becomes the enemy. And that's where we are now. A third of Americans believe civil war is possible in the next 5 years. And 1 in 4 say they'd support breaking the country up into red and blue states. That's not fringe anymore. That's mainstream disintegration. And you know what happens when trust disappears? People look for strongmen. They look for saviors. They stop caring about the rules and start caring about revenge. That's how democracies die, not with a bang, but with a shrug. The American system was never perfect, but it depended on people believing it could work. That belief is gone. And once faith is broken, rebuilding it takes more than elections or speeches. It takes generations. So ask yourself, if the next crisis hits tomorrow, a bank collapse, a cyber attack, another pandemic, do you trust the people in charge to hold this country together? Because most Americans don't. And that might be the most dangerous collapse of all. 4. The dollar is quietly dying, and nobody's preparing you for what comes next. There's a dangerous illusion that's been sold to every American for the past 80 years. That the US dollar is untouchable. That it will always be the king of global currencies. That no matter what chaos erupts at home or abroad, people will still flock to the dollar like a financial safe haven. But behind the scenes, a silent economic earthquake is building. And when it hits, the fallout will be far worse than 2008. You see, for decades, the dollar's dominance came from one thing: oil. The so-called petrodollar system, where oil-exporting countries like Saudi Arabia agreed to only sell oil in US dollars, forced every country in the world to hold dollars to buy energy. That artificially inflated the demand for our currency and allowed us to print money with impunity. It made our deficits tolerable, our wars affordable, and our imports cheap. But in 2023, something unthinkable happened. Saudi Arabia signaled that it would begin accepting other currencies, including Chinese yuan, for oil transactions. It was the first crack in a dam that held back a tidal wave of global change. Today, more than a dozen countries, including Russia, Iran, Brazil, India, and China, are actively working to de-dollarize their economies. The BRICS nations even launched a plan for a new currency backed by gold and commodities. Now ask yourself, if the world no longer needs dollars to buy oil, what happens to the trillions of dollars sitting in foreign central banks? What happens when that money comes flooding back home? Inflation, devaluation, chaos. This isn't just theory. We're already seeing the warning signs. In 2022 and 2023, the U.S. added $3.3 trillion to its national debt while hiking interest rates to slow inflation, a contradictory move that scared off foreign bond buyers. Countries like China and Japan dumped over $400 billion in U.S. Treasuries, and domestic buyers couldn't keep up. That's why the Fed quietly stepped in to absorb the difference again, printing money to plug the hole. But how long can that go on? As our debt nears $35 trillion, we're financing ourselves with fake demand, backed by fake confidence, while the real world starts to walk away. And yet nobody in Washington wants to talk about this. They're too busy funding forever wars, passing trillion-dollar spending bills, and playing political theater while the very foundation of our financial power erodes beneath their feet. The dollar isn't dying with a bang, it's bleeding out in slow motion. And when it finally collapses, everything you thought was secure, your savings, your retirement, your rent, could vanish with it. 3. A digital panopticon is replacing freedom with control, and most people are sleepwalking into it. This isn't a conspiracy. This isn't the future. It's already here. While you were distracted by inflation, elections, and celebrity gossip, a new kind of control system has quietly been constructed around you, digital, invisible, and permanent. Every click, every swipe, every purchase you make is being tracked, analyzed, and sold. Over 4,000 data points are collected on the average American: your face, your location, your voice, your habits, your preferences, your relationships. And the companies doing it: Google, Amazon, Meta, TikTok. But here's what most people don't realize. It's not just about selling ads anymore. This data is becoming currency, control, and compliance. Take facial recognition, once reserved for airports and sci-fi movies, now embedded in Ring doorbells, grocery store cameras, and city surveillance systems. In New York, AI facial tracking is already being used by police and even private corporations to blacklist individuals from entire venues. Think it's limited? Think again. The Department of Homeland Security has a database of over 1.4 billion facial images and has admitted to scanning millions of Americans without warrants. Meanwhile, central banks are pushing towards central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, programmable money that can track every transaction you make, restrict what you can spend on, and expire if not used in time. Sound dystopian? China's already using it. Nigeria's piloting it. The European Union is preparing for it. And the Federal Reserve's FedNow service, launched in 2023, is laying the infrastructure for it here in the US, even if they won't say it out loud yet. Imagine a world where your money can be frozen not by a court, but by an algorithm, where dissent is punished through financial throttling, where your social score determines your access to services. That's not paranoia. That's policy in development. But the most terrifying part? Americans are volunteering for this. We hand over our data for convenience. We allow corporations to eavesdrop on our lives in exchange for 10% off a subscription box. And we cheer on the censorship of voices we don't like, never realizing that once the infrastructure is in place, it can be used against anyone. A society addicted to convenience will trade freedom for safety every time. And now, as the economy falters and social trust collapses, digital control will be sold as a solution. Track the virus, prevent fraud, protect democracy. But behind the slogans is a system built not to empower you, but to contain you. And by the time most people realize it, the gates will already be locked. 2. The family is disintegrating, and without it, society has no backbone. If you strip everything else away, the politics, the economics, the debt, the decline, this is the one that hits you in the chest. The American family is collapsing. And nobody wants to talk about it because it's uncomfortable. Because it forces us to confront what happens when a civilization forgets how to raise the next generation. But the data doesn't care about our discomfort. Right now, over 1 in 4 children in the United States are growing up without a father in the home, the highest rate in the industrialized world. In some communities, that number climbs to 70%. This isn't just some moral panic, it's a disaster with real, measurable consequences. Fatherless homes are linked to higher rates of poverty, crime, incarceration, mental illness, and suicide. Kids from broken homes are twice as likely to drop out of school, 4 times more likely to need behavioral treatment, and far more likely to repeat the cycle in their own lives. And yet, the entire structure of modern society, from economics to education to media, is built in a way that devalues family, disincentivizes marriage, and discourages parenthood. We've made it easier to be a consumer than to be a parent, easier to swipe than to commit, easier to collect child support than to build a home. And no one at the top is asking what kind of society we're creating when the most important institution in a child's life, a stable, 2-parent household, is treated like an outdated accessory. Marriage rates have plummeted 60% since 1970. Birth rates have dropped below replacement levels. The average American family is now having 1.6 children, a number that virtually guarantees long-term demographic decline. But it's not just about numbers, it's about meaning. We've replaced purpose with pleasure, family with followers, love with likes, and we're shocked when people feel lost. You want to know why America feels like it's falling apart? Because more and more people are growing up without roots, without identity, without any stable foundation to stand on. And now, entire generations are entering adulthood with no model of what a functioning family even looks like. This is not sustainable. A civilization cannot outsource parenting to TikTok, to public schools, to bureaucrats. You cannot have a strong nation when the basic building block of society, the family, is treated like an afterthought. This isn't about going back to anything. It's about recognizing that when you rip out the foundation, everything else collapses. And we are dangerously close to that point. 1. America no longer believes in itself, and that's the beginning of the end. We've lost the will to hold it together. Beneath all the symptoms, debt, division, decay, lies a spiritual rot that no budget, no policy, no election can fix. The American people, many of them, maybe most, no longer believe in the idea of America. Not in the flag-waving, anthem-singing way. I mean belief in the project itself. In the idea that this place, for all its flaws and failures, is worth fighting for, worth preserving, worth improving. That belief is vanishing. And when a nation loses belief in itself, collapse becomes inevitable. What do I mean by belief? I mean the sense that we share something. That we're bound by more than just a currency or a zip code. That we're united by ideals, freedom, justice, opportunity, even if we disagree on how to achieve them. But walk outside today, talk to your neighbors, scroll for 5 minutes, and you'll see it's gone. We're not united. We're not even trying to be. We live in parallel realities, red and blue, masked and unmasked, woke and anti-woke, facts and alternative facts. We can't agree on biology, borders, history, truth. Everything is contested. Everything is tribal. And into that void,